Hey, Noah here. A year ago, I began creating a bathhouse for my open-world indie game, Chef RPG. This bathhouse is an important part of the game's story and is a gathering place where characters will often hang out. The design is based on the character design of Aelin, the bathhouse owner, and is inspired by the Ghibli movie Spirited Away. However, looking at the bathhouse a year later, it's a fairly standard wood building and I feel is missing that Ghibli magic and dreamy atmosphere that I'm looking for. Looking at the original baths, it's got a warm atmosphere, but I had a few comments in the past on how I could incorporate more water and steam into the design, and they are absolutely right. The essence of a bathhouse is the hot water and all the machinery that makes the bathhouse function. It's really important to push these aspects in the aesthetics. If we look at scenes from Spirited Away, one of my favorite scenes is when Chihiro washes the river spirit by activating mechanisms on the bath walls and pulling down a water trough. This tells me that this building is very mechanical, and if you strip away all of the ornate decorations, it's a highly complex machine. This is especially true if we look at the backside of the building. You can see this huge mass of machinery and pipes, which reveals the true complexity of the building. Taking this map back to the drawing board, I'm going to get rid of most of the back wall. Next, I really want some verticality since it makes the scene feel more dynamic. We'll create some sort of raised upper level above the main baths to create a more intimate bathing space. One of the unique features of the Ghibli universe is that it creates this dreamy and surreal atmosphere. Part of this can be attributed to the aesthetic design of its architecture and creatures. They often possess a surreal form, often playing with form and scale to create something that feels out of this world. It's really difficult to describe with words, so I'll attempt to recreate this idea visually. I like the idea of having two large oval forms hanging above the ground level to replace the raised platform. These will likely have a metal surface, which is a nice contrast to all of the wood. Next, we'll need pipes running down from the ceiling. Since these oval forms are metal, we might as well make this entire area feel very mechanical and have all the machines, pipes, and pumps clumped together in this area. Finally, I had a good idea for animated pumps, which I'll show you guys later. I'm just tracing the sketch here. We will have these two big tic-tac shapes raised above the main floor. I'll carve them up so it's clear that it's a platform that you can walk on. This is actually a fairly common architectural feature in some modern buildings. A large bean-shaped platform is suspended in a big atrium. It's often used as a quiet hangout spot. Next, I'll draw in some stairs so that we can reach these platforms. It looks okay so far, but I really think it would be interesting to close these platforms off with some sort of roof. This way, it could be like a building within a building. Since it will be a metal structure, I'm going to use a typical metal roof design made up of ridges and finished with a metal panel pattern. We can give these panels some different colors and some shading around the edges for a more weathered look. One of my favorite modern buildings is the Pompidou Center in Paris, where it places all of its mechanical systems on the outside, essentially creating an inside-out building. Since we are exposing the machinery and water pipes, we could use a somewhat similar aesthetic where we have these big tubes running down from the ceiling. Now, all of these background objects are static, so it doesn't make for a super interesting scene. After developing Chef RPG for the past 2 years, I learned that areas with animated backgrounds look and feel much nicer. Animated screens or just having moving vegetation can add life and vibrance to a scene. In this case, I want to create some metal pumps that are always in motion and pumping out steam into the bathhouse. For this machine, I got inspired by the design of Ghibli's Howl's Moving Castle. If we look at the way the castle moves, it's not only the legs that are moving. The body seems to be made up of multiple parts, and each part moves individually by itself. When the castle walks, every part of this massive structure is constantly in motion, which gives it a surreal feeling because it's not something we see in everyday life. With vehicles such as cars or bicycles, you can only see the wheels move, but the body always stays still. With this idea of an entire body in motion, I sketched out an idea of a pump that is segmented into multiple parts, stacked on top of each other so that these pieces can move individually. After drawing this out and testing it with animations, I think it actually looks pretty cool. The movement combined with a somewhat otherworldly shape gives it a nice surreal vibe. If you're wondering how I animated this, I just put a rotation animation on each of these pieces as well as an up and down motion. I made sure the pieces animated at different speeds so that it looks less uniform. After that, I just made 2 more pumps with different shapes. These surreal looking pumps should add a lot of personality to the bathhouse. After the sprites are done, we can throw the whole thing into Unity and see how it looks. I did receive some questions about how I'm setting up scenes in Unity since I'm not using tile maps, which is fairly standard for top-down pixel art games. I'm essentially importing scenes as one big image, but separated into different layers. For example, I have a background layer here. Everything in this layer always stays in the background. Here's a map border layer, which always stays in the foreground. Certain pieces need to be dynamically rendered because characters can walk behind them or in front of them, so I usually have to cut these pieces up and import them separately. When imported into Unity, map borders are made up of a polygon collider and finished by molding the collider along the drawing to create walkable boundaries. So here's a first look at the scene. The big new addition here is the hanging baths on the upper level. If we walk up, we can see the metal pump working in the background, which adds a more dynamic feel to an otherwise static background. So I think the space looks a lot more interesting than before. I do want to play with lighting and particles a bit to make this scene livelier. Let's finish designing the rest of the bathhouse before adding in lighting and effects. Before jumping ahead, I want to take a minute to talk about this video's sponsor, Squarespace, an all-in-one platform for hosting and building websites. They have a ton of great templates that you can choose from, and I recently used Squarespace to create a website for Chef RPG. What surprised me was the amount of customization available, and you can mix and match different templates to create pages suited to your needs. Squarespace templates lets you insert short videos, so now my front page has this cool scrolling view of a restaurant scene. They have automatic image scaling systems, so I never have to worry if images or videos are cropped incorrectly. Scrolling down, we have a system for collecting emails, which can be linked to Squarespace's emailing system if you ever need to send out important updates. They also have great portfolio templates that automatically adjust your image layouts, which allowed me to create this screenshots page in less than a minute. It's an excellent platform for artists and designers looking to create an online portfolio, or game developers looking to make a website for their game. If you're interested in building a website, check out squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/pixelarchitect to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Now back to the video. In the rest of the bathhouse, we have a lobby and a tea house. We also need to create a room at the top of the bathhouse for Aylin. We will have 2 male and 2 female staff members who helps Aylin run the bathhouse, so we'll need staff suites for them to sleep in. Since the tea house will become one of your restaurants and will be decorated by the player, I'm okay with leaving it fairly simple for now. Let's start with updating the lobby. Overall, I do like the look of the lobby, however, I think it's a little small. Looking at this scene, I gained an idea. Instead of creating a separate scene for the staff suites, it would be cool if we just turn it into one big map by building on top of the lobby. As a quick example, if I quickly crop out pieces of the lobby and throw it on top, it actually already looks pretty cool and definitely has some potential. It ends up creating this large stairwell down the center of the scene, which coincidentally also exists in the bathhouse in Spirited Away. If we do something like this where we continue this stair upwards, we can add staff suites on either side of the stair, creating this really big atrium with a lot of verticality. Instead of redrawing the stair, I can just take a chunk of the stair from the lower levels and play around with it to see what kind of layouts can be made. I'm going to put the room for the 2 female staff members on the left side and the 2 male staff members on the right. We will have one last flight of stairs in the middle, which will lead to Aylin's office. Right here around this stair, we run into the issue where different architectural components are blending in with each other, which isn't good. The main problem is that the colors and textures are all very similar. For a player, it should be super clear where the walkable regions are. If regions blend in with each other, you lose that sense of depth that helps to naturally guide a viewer's eyes. Even if you can differentiate between the floor and the wall, it just doesn't look good. To improve this scene, I'll remove the regular wall pattern and instead create a big Japanese style painting hanging on the back wall. It will set up a nice dramatic moment before entering Aylin's room, as you walk up the staircase with the big painting in the background. If we look at scenes from Spirited Away again, in Yubaba's room, who is the owner of the bathhouse, she has a very opulent European decor. The walls have ornate wallpaper and have a variety of paintings, which is a big contrast to the staff rooms, which are rather plain. I think a landscape painting could work really well here, with a big tree as the focal point. I like the idea of having multiple panels joining together to form a single painting. Currently, it still blends in with the background a bit. I'll come back to this later and adjust the color and lighting to make it stand out more. For now, let's jump to designing the staff suites. I want to differentiate the staff rooms from the lower levels, so I'm trying out some different wall and flooring patterns. Right here, I used a square parquet pattern, but it just didn't feel right. Then I remembered, since this is Japanese-inspired architecture, we can use a tatami floor. A tatami is a regular mat that is arranged in a specific pattern to create a floor surface. Here, I made a sort of tatami floor, and although it's definitely not a proper tatami pattern, it did the job of creating a light, minimalist feeling. Down in the lobby, some viewers last year suggested having a reception area where visitors can purchase towels, soaps, and swimsuits. I think this is very important, and most public buildings in real life will have a reception area. To be honest, my old architecture professors would have killed me for forgetting to put in a reception area. And a reception area doubles as a shop with all the things you can purchase on display. Now that the map is mostly drawn out, I like to use a handy tool to quickly check out what it looks like in the game. This is just a 640 by 360 pixel frame, the dimensions of the in-game screen. As we move the frame up the lobby, we can see that there's an overabundance of orange and brown, and the colors are beginning to blend with each other. So maybe a light blue or a blue hue shift in this entire area might work, since orange and blue are complementary colors and look great together. If we use blue, it creates a colder and quieter moment in the space, kind of like a place of respite. It's a break from the loud, vibrant spaces. This is something that architects designing real buildings must consider too. You don't want to create one continuous, vibrant, and loud space because visitors can quickly become tired and overwhelmed. It's important to balance the vibrant spaces with darker, quieter spaces so people can have a place of respite. If we look at the famous Opera Garnier in Paris, we have this brightly lit atrium in the center, but if we look at the spaces to either side, they are quieter and darker, working to balance against the loud and bright atrium. Back in the bathhouse, I find that turning the painting blue really enhances this effect and helps to differentiate the various spaces by cutting up the scene in half. Finally, let's design Aylin's room. Starting with the stair in the lobby, we can draw a quick floor plan to determine this room's layout. In architecture, forms can say a lot about a building. Older government buildings were designed to be monumental and imposing to signify strength and power. With Aylin, I definitely want to express her power and prestige, so I'm going to make her room relatively symmetrical with high walls with a lot of vertical lines to give it a powerful and imposing feel. We can put Aylin's desk on the front so she has a view from her desk that overlooks the entire town of White Ash Harbor. Her office area will be on the south side and her private quarters will be on the north side. We can then divide the entire space into quarters. I think we can make this upper right corner her bedroom and the left side a living and dining area for her and her staff. Now that her desk sits directly in front of the painting, we can cut a hole in the wall behind her desk. The painting now becomes her backdrop. And I'll just quickly jump through the drawing process. Based on the exterior, we know that this room will have a pitched roof. In order to divide the different rooms, we'll need these two large walls right in the middle. Finally, after finishing the room and adding in the furniture, I'm just gonna manually paint in some shadows and highlights along the floors and walls just to give it some occlusion and depth. It looks pretty good, though I think the color can be adjusted a bit. I also want to add one last feature. Currently, there's nothing outside the windows. Before, I just used a blank yellow backdrop, but I think this isn't very interesting. It would be cool to see the outside, and it would look even better if we can get some sort of parallax going on, so you have a more animated backdrop. I cropped out a piece of background trees from another map and dropped it into the scene. Then I'm scaling the image down to make it look smaller so we get a sense that we are higher up. Let's take a tour of the whole updated bathhouse. Here we are walking up the steps into the building. I'll probably need to add a new function to the camera so that it pans up a bit so you can see the whole building. Here we are in the lobby. So there's nobody at the reception yet. Let's try to find someone. Oh, we found a Jet. So she's a main character in the game and the second in command here at the bathhouse. It looks like she's heading to work. Currently, I've just given her some placeholder dialogues, so it's pretty generic right now. I've recently brought on a professional writer who is working on writing some amazing dialogues and stories for these characters. Since she is working at the boutique, let's buy a swimming outfit from her so that we can go into the pool later. I also gave her some soaps to sell. Currently they serve no purpose other than as gifts to give to NPCs. I'm not sure, but maybe there's potential for soaps to serve another gameplay function as well. Let me know if you have any ideas or suggestions. Now then, let's check out the rest of the building. We'll look at the tea house first. I haven't made any changes to this area since it's meant for the player to decorate, but I did add the same exterior parallax effect to the windows, which looks kinda cool. Moving on, if we keep heading up, we will arrive at the staff suites. So the stairwell has this cool blue atmosphere. If we head into one of the rooms, it's very warm again, and I think it makes for a nice contrast. Now let's head up the stairs and check out Aylin's office. And I do like this dramatic moment when we walk past this bright blue painting. Aylin's room has a similar color scheme, but we have these high walls to create a more dramatic effect. And when Aylin is working, she stands behind her desk. This archway here helps frame her, and thanks to the room being symmetrical, the architecture draws a lot of attention towards her. Here's her bedroom with a much larger and more opulent bed compared to any other bed in the game. At first I thought about adding doors, but I actually like it without doors. It's kind of like a modern open plan, and it makes it feel more spacious. We could make it so that you can only access this floor if you are friends with her, so there'd be no need for doors on this floor. Now onto the main event. Let's head into the baths. So here we are in the change room. Let's equip a swimming outfit. You can actually go into the baths without a swimming outfit, but this just feels more immersive. I added some subtle lighting effects and some steam to improve the atmosphere a bit. In the final game, this is a good place to search for main NPCs since the characters will hang out here a lot, especially at night or on weekends. And I finally made a way for characters to walk in and out of water. It was simpler than I thought, and all I had to do was add a sprite mask to the character, which essentially just hides a portion of the character. Walking up the raised platforms, we can see that it's got a totally different vibe with all the metal surfaces and machines. I was thinking about potentially adding some buffs to your character for sitting in a bath, so it gives you some benefits for spending time here, as well as randomly receiving gifts from NPCs. Players who want to play as efficiently and productively as possible might not want to just sit in the baths for half a day, so having various small benefits could make the gameplay more interesting and balanced. That's about it. I'll probably play around with the water effects a bit more down the road. I'll also be adding music and sound effects soon. When those are implemented, the feeling in the bathhouse should be really awesome. Let me know if you have any gameplay suggestions that could take place inside the bathhouse, and any feedback in general is appreciated. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.